So we walk them back, and we pound on the ramp, and they drop it. We toss this guy in, and it's like, well, now what? Right?
Right.
Like
Right.
we're out there with suppressed C8s and bush caps on,
Yeah.
and our guns are in the lav, and we're kneeling by this bison, and like every few seconds you just hear ping ping, rounds are just hitting the bison, and it's just like, okay, like this is basically, it's like, this is where I die.
This video is brought to you by Grey Fox Strategic, Carcajou Tactical, and Vortex Canada. For 10% off your purchase with Grey Fox Strategic or Carcajou, use code DA10.
So Barry, former Canadian Armed Forces member, he's done a lot of deployments. He's done a lot for the service in the uniform. Where did you grow up? What got you into the military? What was your upbringing like? Do you have siblings that were also in the military, or was there some specific person that drew you into the military? How did that all get started?
Yeah, I mean, grew up in Manitoba, pretty normal childhood. Mom, dad, not good at school, better at sports. Military wise, I didn't have any relatives that were in the military, but my dad liked shooting. So a few Christmases in a row, you get a 22 shotgun, just a lot of kind of time just going to the range and just kind of plinking away with the 22 and stuff.
And that was something that you and your dad did on a pretty consistent basis?
Yeah, like nothing
That's
long
cool.
range or anything like that. Just, I don't know. We both just sort of like to shoot.
Yeah.
And then, high school, a couple odd jobs, and around 20, it was my mom who said, she's like, why don't you join the Army? And I said, why don't I join the Army? Off to a recruiting center in Winnipeg. They popped in the VCR tapes of, the different trades that were open. I think it was like infantry, armored, and something else. And I remember watching that. I remember watching the infantry guys like throwing flashbangs, not flashbangs, but the T-flashes into a basement window at the Fibua site, then rolling around and spraying a mag of blanks in. And I was like, I said, that's it. I said, that's what I want to do. And it was a quick turnaround. They told me it'd be a few months, and I remember I get a call 3 weeks later, and they're like, all right, you're leaving for Saint Jean in a month. Pack your bags.
It's interesting. That's how it kind of was for me as well. I think it was 1998 when I went to the recruiting center, and they told me, you'll probably hear from us in a couple of months. And it was about 3 weeks later, and it was go time to Saint Jean. It was pretty quick, which is interesting today. A lot of guys that I'm talking to that are waiting to get into the military, they're waiting 8, 9, 10 months and still nothing, or they're not even sure if it's going to happen. So it's very, very different.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Barry, you're 20 years old. You joined the military. You grew up in Manitoba. Whereabouts? Like how close to geographically to Winnipeg were you growing up?
I was about an hour north, a small town called Gimli, Manitoba, right on Lake Winnipeg. Small town, 2,500
Nice
people. Yeah, beautiful area. Had a Seagram's distillery, big Seagram's. I think that's where they used to make Crown Royal. So old Air Force base in Gimli as well. So I actually grew up, my dad had a flying school. So I actually grew up flying at a really young age, but the Air Force didn't want me. I didn't have the marks. I didn't have the smarts for the Air Force.
Interesting, eh? And all of the things that we're going to talk about here in a minute are clear identifiers, or validates how intelligent you actually are and what you're capable of. But it's interesting how something on a piece of paper that might be academically connected will be the determining factor whether or not we're suited for a specific trade or not. Anyway. Yeah. So what was your upbringing like? So you spent some time outside. You have a lot of buddies. Younger siblings, older siblings. What did that kind of situation look like for you?
Yeah, older sister, a couple years older than me. So obviously we never got along, which I think is pretty normal. A pretty typical Canadian upbringing. Sports, played hockey, outside all the time. any moment I had, we were outside building, doing all the things in the 80s, that you couldn't do nowadays, like just making insane bike jumps, jumping bikes into the harbor. We'd strap a life jacket onto the handlebars and just launch a BMX 30 feet into the air, and just thinking that was great. Yeah, I mean, just lots of outdoors, building forts, lighting fires, just all that. Love the outdoors.
Good stuff. And do you get a chance to go home very often? Like, do you go back to Manitoba on a regular basis?
No, not so much anymore. Usually my mom comes out here. It's a little bit nicer out here, I find. Right.
And now what's the situation? Are you married? Do you have kids?
Yeah. Married, 2 stepdaughters,
Right on.
13 and 16. So that's busy.
Yeah,
busy. Sure. But yeah, I mean, life is good.
Good for you. And so now let's take a bit of a journey to your military. So you join, you're 20 years old, you go to Saint Jean, and then from Saint Jean, once you graduate basic training, where did you end up? Where did the boots take you?
Yeah, so Saint Jean, and then straight to Meaford to 1 RCR battle school, and 16 weeks of, at the time you think is the hardest thing. Well, at the time it was the hardest thing that I had done in my life. Right. Yeah. But, just, man, I mean, just great memories of that, of getting pushed physically, of getting pushed mentally, of sort of, learning a little bit more about yourself, about what you can do with less, how much further you can go with less sleep. You don't need to have that full stomach all the time to have the energy to go and do stuff, and really kind of learning that camaraderie that you don't know it unless you've been in the military. There's just, you don't really find it anywhere else. Just from, you go through those hardships together, it bonds you. It really brings you together. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's, where the true, I would say relationship forging happens is through hardships. And also there's a lot of bonding that happens during good times too. Like when you're partying or, acting like a donkey with a group of buddies, you tend to bond quite well. But I truly believe those hardships are a necessary requirement to really know the character of the people that you're working with. And the military does a good job of, well, it used to, I'm not sure how it is anymore, but it used to do a good job of pushing people. What I felt anyway, and I'll ask you what your opinion was. During battle school, I went through in 1999, you could tell that the instructors wanted you to become a professional soldier. They were invested in teaching you what you needed to know to get ready for war, but also to look out for each other. And, at the time, I think you mentioned it earlier, and I agree, it was the hardest thing you're kind of going through at that time as a 19 or 20-year-old. But what was really cool about it is looking back on it, I remember vividly some great memories about the instructors, the way they approached the instruction, the way they disciplined us, and the way that they genuinely cared about the quality of soldier that was being created. Was the experience for you similar with the RCR battle group?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the instructors, I remember all the instructors still, and I remember my 2IC, it was a Jack. And it's funny because we crossed paths. He was from 3RCR. We just crossed paths our whole career. And he really, really set the standard for me as a young soldier. And he was an ex-airborne guy. He was just hard as nails. I remember we were doing that was it that 3.2K run, timed run that we had to do.
Right.
And he would run up to the slower guys, light a cigarette, smoke it beside them while they're huffing and puffing. And he'd be like, what's wrong with you? Why are you running so slowly? And then he would just tear off to the next guy.
Yeah.
But as much as he pushed us and as hard as he was and he yelled at us, one of the biggest lessons that he taught me, I think, was we just finished some like week long, battle school exercise. And we got back late and we were tired and we were hungry and, we're cleaning kit and we're doing this. And all of a sudden he's like, everyone, fourth section, get in your room. And so we all jam into one room. And he opens up his backpack and he pulls us all out a sub from Subway. He bought us all a sub.
Come on.
Like,
amazing.
He didn't have to do that. But, when you look back on that, it's like we worked hard for him. And, he appreciated that and he did that for us. And that was just a really sort of big, obviously it sticks in my head. It's such a positive memory of him and of what he did and about, taking care of the troops.
Yep. That's awesome. And such a cool thing to think about so many years later. That's one of the things that resonates and stuck with you. It's such a small thing, but it had a positive effect. So that's pretty cool. When you look back at that, the battle school experience before you went to your first posting with the RCRs, do you feel like at that time, the training that we received during battle school was relative to the type of environment that we were dealing with at that time? Mind you, at that time, Afghanistan wasn't quite a thing yet. Bosnia was winding down, but do you feel like what was focused on during battle school was pretty close to the realities of what we were actually trying to prepare for?
Yeah, I think, when I look back at it, it's like they're trying to make us into soldiers, right? They're trying to, you're learning all the weapon systems, you're throwing grenades, you're firing the 84, you're firing the C6, you're firing M72s. You're doing your section attacks, you're doing some patrolling, and they're teaching us they're teaching us the basics for us to go to a battalion and, to be able to function, to be able to function as that infantryman, as that rifleman. So, I think you come out of battle school thinking, you're on top of the world. And then you get to battalion.
Then it's a rude awakening.
And then it's a rude awakening, yeah.
Yeah. Good. So now you go to battalion. Where were you? Were you in Gagetown? Were you in Petawawa? And then what did the next couple of years look like for you?
Yeah, so straight to Petawawa. And we kind of got there at an odd time where the one RCR was getting ready to go to Bosnia. So they had already started their workup training. So we kind of got there and we were sort of put in a Duke's company and we're just sort of used to help with training because we were too new. They weren't going to throw any of us onto the tour. Everything had already been, all the positions had already been filled. So sort of just as a training, we were assisting with training. So we didn't really get to know the battalion, right? We were the FNGs, right? Right. And nobody cared to know us because they were deploying and we weren't.
Mm-hmm. And was the culture in battalion similar to kind of what it was like in the 2nd Battalion PPCLI, where you're an FNG, you're a fucking new guy, you're told to basically shut up, fall in, your opinion doesn't matter, we don't want to hear it. Was it kind of like that, or did you have a different type of experience?
No, it was pretty much, shut the fuck up, don't talk. And I remember it's like, you're new, yeah. So we're in the shacks, go buy a case of beer.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go buy a case of beer, and then they just take it from you. And then it was just I remember kind of the first weekend and got the old dog corporals that still lived in the shacks would just come and get us.
Yes.
Let's go, bring your beer, let's go. And and then it was just you're going to fight him. Thankfully, I didn't have to fight anybody. And then it was, it was an eye opener. I think we sort of expected it. But it was okay, battle school is over.
Yeah, well, yeah. It was like when we talk about a rude awakening, going into battalion life, it was awesome, man. Looking back at it, young, like 19, 20, 21 years old, it was so much fun, but so different. Where the example that you gave earlier about, your section commander showing up and running with a dart in his mouth, like I remember there's a dude, he's a stud, super fit, checked out, just one of those like super soldiers. And we show up for morning PT. So we're doing some physical training, which we're going for a run. In Winnipeg, it was -30 at the time. So we're doing a 5K run in -30, brand new to the organization. It is so cold. Everything is frozen before you even get started. And this old school sergeant, man, he wasn't old school, but like looking back at it, he had that approach, right? Super fit. He was having a dart. And the wind is whistling, it's freezing cold, and people are trying to like move around and warm up and whatnot. And he shows up having a dart, he flicks it like nothing, bends down, tightens his shoes, and then says, all right, his words, and I'll never forget it. He's like, all right, you fags, fall in, and takes off like a bat out of hell. We're like, what is happening? So he's gone like a rabbit, and we're trying to chase him. And I remember at the end of it, it's only 5K, not a big deal, but it was literally probably -30. And man, I remember everything frozen. Like my junk was frozen, fingers were frozen, everything's frozen. And we're finishing up, and he's like, "You retards! Didn't anybody tell you when it's cold like this, put a sock on it, So in other words, like stuff your shorts with a sock to keep things reasonably warm." And I'm laughing, thinking, "Is this for real? Is this what battalion life is like?" But I was pretty new to the organization, but I remember that like it was yesterday. Yeah, a lot of, just fall in line, do as you're told, keep your mouth shut. But man, they worked hard and they truly believed in being a good soldier. What that looks like, obviously that's open for discussion, but
Yeah. I mean, like, I think, just infantry guys, doing battle school and going to battalion, whether you're RCR or PPCLI, I think you get treated basically the same.
Yeah, I think so too.
By the sounds of it.
It sounds that way. Every dude that I chat with, RCR, PPCLI, or Van Du, very similar stories. The only difference really is geographical location, but it seems very, very similar between the organizations, which is pretty funny. So yeah, all right. So fast forward in just a little bit. Now that you're getting into the kind of the routine of battalion life, what did the next foreseeable future look like for you? Like, Bosnia deployments, Afghanistan deployments, where did the infantry take you, and what did you find yourself being really good at?
Yeah, so I got lucky. I got a jump course while the battalion was in Bosnia, which you think was lucky, and then the battalion gets back and they're all pissed off because some 8-month private got a jump course that some guy's been waiting for 5 years. So if you were one of the guys that got the jump course, they didn't like you. Yeah. But I mean, I think, just the type of soldier that I was, and I was always fit, and I always wanted to do more, and I always wanted to kind of do better, and kind of, I just wanted to excel. I mean, I loved it. Once I got into it and I got into the stream of things, I loved it. So, I mean, I was lucky. I did a Cambrian patrol in 98. I think I was still private. And I mean, that was just massive experience, Mm-hmm. Actually with it's funny because I know one of the two of the guys that were on that patrol with me in one ended up going to Dwyer Hill. But so I did Cambrian patrol. It was great experience up in the. So
for folks listeners that don't know what the Cambrian Patrol is, maybe just take a bit of a deep dive and explain to guys like this is a grind. You're in the Beck & Brecons in the UK, correct?
Yeah.
And it's a grind with a rucksack on the entire time, correct?
Yeah, so it's like an international patrolling competition. So you take a section. It's an infantry section. It was 8 of us. I was lucky I got to be the signaler, so I got to carry a radio as well. And you're basically, you're dropped off. You got a map and a compass, and you're given a series of points to get to And then you have certain stands that you might have to do, just like certain events when you get to that point. It might be first aid, it might be like artillery, it might be, you might actually be on the range shooting. So we were hosted by a unit in Wales, and then we had to learn the SA-80 because we didn't take guns. So we're learning their SA-80. Right. We're getting decked out, and I don't even think I don't think Canada had Gore-Tex at the time, so I think we got Brit Gore-Tex.
Wow!
And so we didn't have to wear our rubber rain suits when we were over there. Yeah, and it was exactly that. It was a grind. I mean, the terrain. I'd never seen terrain like that before. It's not like that in Petawawa. And
what is it like? Just to kind of give us an appreciation, is it rocky? Is it thick forest? What is it?
It's anything from thick forest to just these bald, I'll say, mountains that are just windswept. A bit like Gagetown, where you could find a swamp on top of any hill you go into.
Isn't that crazy? I know. First time I spent any time in Gagetown, it defies logic, gravity, and physics. You'd walk straight uphill for what felt like hours, then you come to a swamp at the top of it. It's mind-blowing. But anyway,
I think it was designed. Gagetown was designed for infantry guys.
Oh, yeah.
just to be shitty. So I mean, I remember we did about 75 kilometers in the 2.5 days. We never stopped. We were walking the whole entire time, day, night. And that was sort of a good introduction to sleep deprivation beyond anything I'd ever felt at battle school before. Right. And just exhaustion, you're just, you're seeing things. Like I remember the patrol commander, because I'm right behind him as the signaler. We're walking through this field on the second night, and he stops me and he goes, "Barry." I'm like, "Yeah, Rob." He's like, "Did that dog come up to you and lick your hands?" And I said, "What?" He's like, "That dog that's been running around us, did it come up and lick your hands?" And I was like, "No, man, like there's no dog running around the patrol right now." And he's like, "Yeah, okay." And then just, off he goes. Yeah. But, when you get that tired, you don't know what you're going to see.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I remember a couple of times mistaking a stump, tree stump that wasn't moving and had nothing around it, mistaking it for somebody that was in the prone position sneaking up on us. Yeah. Like your mind plays mysterious tricks on you when you're super fucked up on sleep deprived, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's awesome. So you do that. Great experience for you. And then what? Like what were the next kind of steps for you?
So next, Kosovo 99. I think we took over from a Patricia battalion, actually. Yeah. So, I mean, Kosovo was a good first tour. We were I think we would have been the second unit in. We were down I was in Bravo Company. We were down in Magura. I was a rifleman in a section. It was an interesting tour. There wasn't really an active threat towards, the soldiers per se, but there's still stuff going on around, just between the other factions and stuff. So, a few explosions, some gunfire. The interesting thing was right in outside of Magura, there was an airfield, and it was a Russian airfield. So the Russians came, just spray painted K4 on their vehicles, and we're part of your contingent, right? And we had to do these two VCPs north and south of the airfield, Bulldog North and Bulldog South. And, it was, you're seeing these, all the vehicles you learn in, when you're doing your infantry vehicle identification, you're seeing the BTRs and the BDRMs, and you're seeing them for real now. Right. And I still have one of the Russians' winter hats, because they would drive by and they would hold their hat out and they wanted one of our green toques. So just throw them a green toque, and then they would just toss you their Russian hat with the sickle on the front. So there were some tense times with them, but it was a great first tour. Good good first experience.
Yeah, that is good. How long were you there for at that time? Do you remember?
It was 5. It was a 5-month tour because then we ended up closing down. I stayed for another month of close down. So I think that was about a 6-month rotation in total.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was pretty lucky as well with the 2nd Battalion. The end of the Bosnia, Kosovo, Herzegovina, that whole conflict. I was in Thomas Slabgrad with B Company in 2001, and that was my first tour with battalion. Peacekeeping tour. But to your point, not a lot was going on. It wasn't, didn't feel like threatened or endangered any time, but you could tell there was a lot of just shady shit going on in multiple different areas of Thomas Slabgrad proper, where we were, and not knowing who's connected to who, whether it's a Serbian strength or a Croatian strength or what exactly was going on. But you could tell that there was still conflict and instability, but from an overall experience perspective, it was a good first tour for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you get back from that tour, and you get some time off, and then what happened for you? What was next for your career?
I think just kind of back into battalion training cycle, a few more courses here and there. And then next deployment would have been 2003, and we're going to Bosnia.
Okay. So 2003, you must have been, was this part of Bosnia, like one of the last tours before it was shut down? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was. So we were in Dravar.
Yeah.
And it was a shutdown tour. So, I mean, it was, okay. I felt for a lot of the guys who that was their first tour, they were like, what is this? This isn't the Army. And I felt bad because, I mean, we were patrolling and we'd go for coffee and pizza, and I mean, if you wanted to go outside the camp and do PT, you just signed out and you could go for a run, you know? Right. So it was a pretty chill tour, a lot of working out and, not really a lot of, experience gained as far as your soldier skills. But I mean, you're still getting, you're still seeing a different culture. You're still seeing a different part of the country. Yep. And I mean, I think, you're still, you're carrying your gun. You've got real bullets. You don't have a BFA on the end of it. So I think there's always, little bits you can take from those tours. Yep. But yeah, it was another 6-month rotation. And,
interesting time too for you. So 2003, because Afghanistan was very much a thing at that point. So not a lot of turnaround from 2003 until when things really started to kick off for Canadians in Afghanistan. Yeah. So how long were you home after that tour in 2003 in Bosnia? How long were you home before things really started to take focus towards Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too long because I know when we were training for that 03 tour, 3RCR was getting ready to go to Kabul. So they actually took a company from 1, and we were pissed off because our company, we wanted to go, but we were slated for Bosnia. So could already see the Afghanistan was starting to, it was starting to wind up.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. And so now 2003, 2004, what were you doing in preparation, knowing that Afghanistan is coming? So were you still part of the rifle company? Did you do any specialty training towards anything specific, like from a trades perspective, courses? And
I mean, just still kind of crushing out. I wouldn't say no to a course. So I know doing machine gun, mortars, anything I could get my hands on, I was doing. We had a slot for U.S. Army Ranger School around that time. I had my JLC or JNC or whatever it is, but I wasn't a JAC yet. And they said, well, it's got to be Master Corporal Sergeant to apply for that course. And I said, no, that's stupid. It's kind of a basic leadership course if you kind of look into what it is. So, I threw my name in and went through the testing for it and, came up on top. And they said, okay, yeah, you're a corporal, but you're going to Benning, pack your bags.
Good for you. So for listeners that maybe not sure what Barry's talking about, a JLC course is a junior leadership qualification, JLC or JLQ, and that generally will set a soldier up for a promotion into the rank of what's called Master Corporal. So it's generally like a junior level leadership course, but that's what Barry's talking about. So you were able to do what they were saying as a prerequisite is, and was this battalion mandated, saying in order to do a ranger course, you need to represent the battalion as a master corporal? Or was that something that was expected from the ranger side to accept somebody that's not American?
I think it was definitely like a Canadian caveat. Like, I think we put that on, and I think it's just because there's you get so few slots on that course, they don't want to potentially, waste one, and it's a lot of money.
Sure.
I think as well to send a guy down there. So they just want to make sure they're sending the best possible, candidate down who can come back with that training and that experience and then pass it on.
Absolutely. I mean, for folks that don't know, to as a Canadian, to do a ranger course, that's a bit of a feather in the cap to the individual, but also it's a representation of generally one's soldiering ability, their soldiering skills. They're not just going to put anybody on that course. They want somebody that's physically capable but very competent and a proficient soldier. So good for you. What was that experience like for you?
That again was it was eye opening. I talked to a few guys in my unit who had gone down before just to get a few kind of understanding of kind of what kit I could kind of get away with taking that was better than the stuff they would give you, and a few little trips or little tips here and there. So I mean, you get down there and you're issued everything American. The only way they know you're Canadian is we're wearing the old Woodland Cam uniforms, and we're there on their name tape where it would say US Army, it says Canada. And 90% of the time that's covered up by your web gear. So right. Other than, when you say A all the time, that's the only really way they know that you're Canadian. But, once they find out, they definitely want to mess with you. So, the first sort of phase is a lot of you're doing PT tests, sit-ups, push-ups, chin-ups. You got to do like a buddy run. You got to do I think a 5-mile run in your web gear, and everything is timed, right? Like that course has been going on for so long. Everything is like the standard is the standard is the standard. And if you don't meet the standard, they don't care if you're from Latvia or Canada. Like you don't meet the standard, bud, pack your bags. We don't want you here. Yeah. Right. So the first phase is a lot of sort of just like, you're doing a lot of those checks. You're doing, you got to swim. You got to do some pool work, which is a little different. You got to swim the length of a pool with your web gear on. You're in full uniform, boots, web gear. You got your rubber rifle, and you got to swim the length of the pool. And I mean, you got to swim the length of the pool. You're holding your gun up out of the water. You can't be half drowning. Like you got to swim. And you got to, blindfolded off a big diving board. Then you got to jump in and you got to get all your kit off while you're still underwater. So, they're trying to put some stress on you, right? Obviously, They're trying to put some stress. They're trying to kind of find some phobias. And, so
and before you went down there, Barry, did you have a chance to get a feel for any of that on your own leading up to it? So did you get access to a pool? Did you try that stuff out ahead of time or no?
Yeah, I did do so. I definitely did some pool work in Pet. They let me jump in with my uniform and boots on just to get a little bit of swimming in like that. But the swimming wasn't really. I'd always been a pretty strong swimmer, so it wasn't a big issue. It was really just like my biggest concern was like I remember one of the guys who'd gone down. He's like, your push-ups have to be perfect because if they want to fuck with you, you're going to do 20 push-ups and they're going to go 1, 1, 1, 1. Yeah. And I think you had to do 49. I think it was 49 push-ups, perfect form, no stopping. So, I mean, they're like, you got to be able to do 70 push-ups. If you can't do 70 straight, because you might get that one instructor that just wants to be a dick. Yeah. And, he's going to count your first 20 as one. So, I mean, physical, the fitter you are, that's never going to be, that's always going to be a bonus, right? In anything you do. So, definitely just, and whatever the standard was there before I went down, just make sure I was well above it.
Good for you.
So that was a big part of the pre-training.
Mm-hmm. Good. So how long is that course altogether? How long were you in Benning before you came back to Canada?
The course itself, I think it was 63 days.
Wow. That's a long course.
Broken up into three phases. So your first phase, I think, Randy, I think we were down there about 2 weeks beforehand. I was down there was 6 Canadians in total. Mm-hmm. So kind of with their international kind of training wing in Benning, just, getting all our gear and kind of learning just kind of learning a little bit of the military, U.S. military, just kind of their stuff. Chain of command. Yeah, their doctrine, just going through that sort of stuff, just so we have a little bit better understanding going into it. And then, you show up like 5 a.m. and it's like you're launched out of a cannon, it's dark. It's dark, and you're just, people are yelling and screaming. And the first phase is a lot of, you're doing all those kind of PT tests, all those checks. And you're doing, I guess it'd be squad or section level stuff. Mm-hmm. And you work up, you got to do a 16-mile, rucksack march out to, the big obstacle course. And we're carrying C6s, we're carrying, if you had the M203 vest, it had, however, I think it had like 18 M203 bombs, but they're all concrete. Oh, and if you had an AT4 missile, it was full of concrete, right? Wow. And we had C6s, we had tripods, and it's 16 miles, and it's just timed. Every mile is timed, right? Wow. And you get there, and then the next day was I can't remember the name of that big obstacle course, but it's a monster of an obstacle course out there. You do that.
And how many people started? How many people would have been on course with you at the beginning? Do you remember?
I think we had about 150.
Holy smokes. Just from a logistical perspective, that's a lot to manage. That's a big animal. And then how many people do you figure finished when you're all said and done?
So the weird thing is you can get recycled. So say you fail a phase, they can put you back a phase, and then you have to restart that with the next group that comes through. So I think we probably finished over 100, but I know that there was only about 60 of us that had gone through from day 1 to day 63 without recycling.
And as that's happening, like, how many people are just outright quitting? They're just saying, "Yep, not for me, I'm out."
There's different ways to quit on that course, right?
Right.
You could see guys that they're just going to decide to fail a PO, right? Or an injury, right? That's always the easy way out, right? My ankle, sure. I can't go on. So I think more than outright quitting, there was a lot of, injuries. Yes. And, definitely don't think any less of those guys. It can be a pretty tough and grueling course, right? Like they don't feed you. That's the biggest. They're trying to simulate what they would say combat rations. So you're on 2 meals a day. So if you're in a camp, you're getting like one hot meal, and then you're one ration. And if you're out, food was the last thing you got to do, right? Food was the absolute, like, I lost 37 pounds on that course.
Holy shoot, buddy. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I went down a little bit heavier. I went down 195. Yeah. And I lost 37 pounds, and I was like a scrawny, weak, I was in the worst shape of my life when I finished it.
Oh, I bet. And along the journey, like, do you learn anything? Because I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard, like, for an example, there's guys that I've done, selection with, and I've done SOAC with, and the Special Operations Assault course, there's a phase of, patrolling green skills where Like it's a grind, but they teach you a lot. And I remember having a conversation with a couple of guys that I was on course with, and I said, part of me, always wanted to do the Ranger course. I just want to experience it. I want to get a feel for it. And I've heard guys that have done the Ranger course and have done our SOAC course, and they said it would have been a waste of time because everything that you need to know right now is what you're learning. From your experience, did they teach you anything that you really weren't aware of, or did they polish or refine anything that you already knew, or was it more of a physical grind?
I think sort of can answer that two ways, Randy. So, I mean, I was a corporal going down there.
Right.
So, I had a couple of tours under my belt. I didn't even have my recce course when I went down on that course. So I learn? Yes, I learned. If I was like a jack who had a couple other courses or a sergeant, I probably would have felt a little bit more like, wow, this is just a repeated kick in the nuts for 63 days. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely learned a bit about tactics, but I think the biggest thing you learn is just like how much, again, how much your body can take, how much you can push, how much you can keep going. Like it was just it's like another level from battle school, right? Because you're humping all the time. You're falling asleep. It didn't matter. You're going to fall asleep, like I fell asleep standing up in the middle of a road. And then I have, 5 Ranger instructors just screaming at me. I fell asleep with my head on the butt of a C6. And this cadre just came and flicked it off safe and squeezed off a burst. And I barely even moved. My head just rattled a bit. Like they're stealing NVGs off of us in the patrol base. In the mornings, they would just come be like, who's missing stuff? And they would just dump a bag of stuff off. Because, you get
to a point and there's just the level of tired. You're absolutely right. And the way you just described it is bang on. I can attest to that, where it's almost like surreal. Things are happening around you, but you're so tired. Your brain doesn't want to connect with it. Like it's not reality. It's not actually happening, or you just dismiss it. Like it's not a thing. It's wild what the brain and the body can do, and how far we can push it. But I remember an incident very similar. I fell asleep. I think I was on watch. Fell asleep, and one of the instructors threw an arty sim probably 5 feet from me. And artillery sim's pretty loud. And I remember waking up, but then immediately falling asleep again, like acknowledging it and just like, oh, back to sleep. Yeah. So, wow. So, man, so the instructor comes by, lets off a burst of your C6, and then what happens? So you're now awake, and what's the consequence? What's the recourse in a situation like that?
Well, they kind of worked on this, like you could get these minuses, like a major minus or a major plus. And if you got 3 of them, you could get recycled, right? Oh, okay. So they would always go, if you fucked up, everything was a number there, right? So like, what's your number? 156. That was my roster number. So it's like, what's your number? I'm like 156. He's like, come see me in the morning, which means you're going to get a minor, a negative or something like that. Right. So I remember the morning comes, and they say, okay, anyone who gave their number, come up. And I'm like, these motherfuckers don't have any of this written down. I said, I'm not going up there. I said, I'm not going up there. And I remember one of my buddies like, hey, didn't he tell you? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'm not going up there. I'm just like, and it wouldn't have mattered. That was in Florida phase. So we're in the last phase. And even if I'd gotten a minus, it wouldn't have affected me. But I'm like, nah, he doesn't know. He doesn't know my number. Like all you heard that whole night was, blanks getting fired off by the staff,
Nonstop.
So I was like, so I'm just going to roll the dice on this one, see what happens. And yeah, sure enough, nothing bad came of it.
No. Cool. Very cool, man. Good for you. So you come back now. What was when you come back after that course, how were you viewed with your peers? Guys are probably a little bit envious. Some guys are pretty stoked for you. Did you get a chance to really pass anything on, or like, what was that like?
It's funny when like in the infantry, when you do something that nobody else really does, it's almost like it's positive, but it's negative, right? Because now I can't basically fuck up anything because, oh, well, Barry's a ranger. Oh, the ranger fucked up, right? So it's, there's sort of that. There's sort of that to it, but I was always I wasn't like I was never really like I'm not a boastful kind of guy, right? It's like I looked at it as I did a course, I learned a bunch of stuff. It's part of my evolution as a soldier. I took what was good, the good stuff I learned about it, and I dumped out the bad stuff, Right. And again, you're doing American tactics. We were doing a lot of patrols, recce's, raids, ambushes. It's pretty low speed, but you're still learning another way to do stuff, right? Yeah, and I think just having that knowledge and then being able to apply that as you go forward is, you can't beat that. And especially
that's a great attitude, man. That's a great approach. I think, with an open-minded approach like that is, like you just said, there's something that you're learning that's either validating what you already know or a new way to look at something different. But at the end of the day, it's still knowledge. It's knowledge that you now have, and you can draw upon it when the situation presents itself. So good for you, man. Yeah. And sorry, I think I cut you off there. There was something else you're going to say at the end there?
No, and I think again, just that you kind of put in your pocket, like, okay, now I have a different level of how much it can suck, right? I have a different level of how tired I can be, and I have a different level of how hungry I can be. So it's like, I'm like, remember that and use that, And I think that that aspect of it definitely helped going forward, especially, once you get onto something like, a sniper course where the attrition rate back then was just wild.
And I understand that you spent some time as a sniper, and you wrote a book. You're an author, which we're going to talk about. But if you don't mind, unless of course there's something else you want to add with regard to the Ranger course, but how did the transition, or where did the transition happen in terms of getting you onto your recce course and a sniper course?
So, did Kabul tour in 05. We were just like DNS platoon, just out of Camp Julian. So that was a pretty quiet tour for us. So came back from that, and I had 3 goals when I joined the Army, and I kind of got to know. I said I want to be a sniper, I want to do a Ranger, and I want to do Pathfinder. Those are 3 of my things. So I'm like, okay, next logical step is let's do sniper. So, the battalion being the battalion, I wanted to go on the sniper course, and one of the prerequisites was recce. And they're like, well, you don't have your recce course. I'm like, yeah, but I did Ranger. U.S. Army Ranger School. I would think there would be some, I'm not saying one's harder or less than the other, but, so the DSM at the time, he's like, no, he has to do a recce course, and he's going to be a candidate instructor on the recce course. I said, sure, whatever you need me to do. So I get course loaded. I knew all the instructors. They're like, Barry, you're an instructor candidate. So, I mean, I was just a Section 2 IC on a recce course, because they're like, you got the knowledge, you got the skills to teach these guys. So let's go and do that. So get that done, get that check. And then, sniper course. So 2005, basic sniper pre-course, 24 guys on it, whittled down to 18. So we started full. So it was 2005, and that was sort of like the old standard where you're doing 8 stocks, and you got to get I think it's 48 points to go forward. Okay. Just a complete 180 from anything you've done in the Army. Everything in the Army up to that was team. Now it's don't talk to your buddy, don't get help. Everything was individual. Every single thing you did was individual. Your judging distance, your observation. Obviously, when you're getting to the range and you're working with the spotter, but the stock, it's individual. So a change, right? So now it's like, and now for me, there's that big, like, I've always done well, but this is a sniper course. Like, more people fail this than pass this. So, and yeah, I mean, again, very physically demanding, way more mentally demanding than the physical part. And it's just because you're putting so much pressure on yourself throughout that course, because it's so it's weighted by the individual much more.
Right. And in looking back at it, obviously you got through it and you went on to do, great things and had some success. If you were to kind of give yourself any advice, knowing the information now prior to how, from the mental side, how would you approach it, or would you approach it any differently?
I think that course back then, the best way to approach it was not knowing anything, because there was nothing really in like the regular army that prepared you for that amount of stress. Like it was just a completely different beast altogether. Right. And we had 18 guys on our course, and we ended up graduating 3.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a big it's a big number. That's or a small number rather, from a big start. So of the 3, now that you've got the qualification, how soon before you actually got to put it to fruition and you were employed doing that job?
I was incredibly lucky. So two of us from that course went straight into sniper platoon in 1 RCR as we were gearing up to go over in 2006. So, that was just like a light switch moment in the Army, because you go from that regular infantry side to, you're still infantry, but now you're specialized. And it was kind of like, it was big boy rules in snipers. It wasn't yes, master corporal, yes, sergeant. It was okay, Gord. Okay, it was first name, and it was about what kit, what gear do we need to be able to do the job, right? So it's like, if this rucksack doesn't work, what do you need? If this crappy vest doesn't work, what do you guys need? So you're just kind of getting treated more like an adult. We did PT on our own. We had our own timings. We were professional. And not saying that the regular infantry wasn't professional, but we just had that added, sense to it.
Yes. And it's interesting. Generally, the motivated soldiers that are just a little bit more professional, a little bit more motivated, they tend to be similar pipeline in terms of progression. You see them, they want to be challenged with a recce course or a sniper course or a specialty course of some sort, and they tear the ass out of it. And I think, to your point, that's not to discredit the rest of the infantry. There's a lot of good soldiers in the infantry, but generally guys they'll do one of two things. They will stagnate and they'll be okay with just kind of plateauing, or they'll want more from themselves, and they'll surround themselves with those types of people that are going to push them and get a little bit better in terms of being a true professional soldier. So I think it's like that generally from my experience all across the board. And what's cool about it is those folks that are motivated, they will surround themselves and they will find that, they're going to be around like-minded people, and their time in uniform is going to be even more enjoyable. So good for you, man. So now you're being treated like a professional. It's 2006. If for folks that, maybe just need a bit of a history refresher, if you recall, 2006 to 2009, we'll say that those 3 years in Afghanistan, there were a lot of Canadians coming home in body bags. It was a very heated time in Afghanistan. So if you're okay with it, talk to us a little bit about what your next deployment looked like.
Yeah. So, I mean, you hit it right on the head there. So we were the first sniper group to deploy with the new 338.
Right on.
So we got that. So we kind of had a really crash course on that. Looking back, would have liked to have more time on it, but, and now definitely, because you're watching the news and you're seeing people are dying. People are dying, and the ramp ceremonies, and the closer you kind of get to that deployment, you're like, I'm like, okay, well, I've got 3 under my belt, but they weren't combat deployments. They were, and I wasn't a sniper.
Right.
So, the buildup was, it wasn't stressful. I was excited, but slightly apprehensive at the same time, right? Like, you're going into combat, and it's like, I want to think that when the bullets fly, I'm going to react, I'm going to do my job. But there's also that part, like, well, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know, like, because I haven't been actually shot at before. So, I don't know. So there's a bit of apprehension in it too. So, I mean, yeah, we deployed at Kandahar 06, and we're pretty, I'm going to say we're pretty green as a battalion, as a unit for going into combat. And again, we took over from PPCLI in that tour, and they had a rough go. They had a rough go that tour. And we would always kind of balance it. So we'd be like 3 weeks early. So we get to go and hang out with the Patricia snipers for a bit, kind of go over the gear. Hey, this is what worked. This is what didn't work. They go over all their lessons learned, awesome. Which was always incredibly, incredibly helpful. Right.
Yes, man. Such huge value. And just like, I love hearing those stories, man, because it's, we're all on the same team. We're wearing the same flag on the shoulder. Geographically, one battalion, one regiment is different, but we're really the same. So it's really cool to hear those stories and, the shared knowledge and professionalism.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think, from being in the Patricia, there's always kind of that banter between regiments and stuff, kind of like the bullshit bravado. But then when you're going into combat and it's in its time, then it's exactly like you said. It's like, no, we're all one here. I'm going to tell you everything to help keep you alive. And I'm like, and I'm going to fucking listen because you guys have been doing it. And so, yeah, just invaluable info.
And man, like, if you don't mind, just chat a little bit about what is the feeling when you guys are doing the handover. So the relief from place is happening, the handover is happening. What is the temperature of morale and the reality of, Afghanistan in that time frame? Do you remember, like, from the virtual feelings of looking back on it, like, what was going through your mind? What were some of the conversations being had before you guys actually launched on your first operation overseas?
I look back at pictures and I look like I look like a baby, like I look young. I mean, there's excitement, because it's like, I'm here, I've got the gear, all our guns are painted, everything that I've trained for, everything that I've learned in my career has built to this point, right? It's built to this point, and you're excited, and I'd kind of said this to a friend. It's like, you're an Olympic athlete, right? And your Olympics are only going to come who knows when, right? And then it's like, you train and train and train, and now I want to go to the Olympics, and now I'm at the Olympics.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
I'm not saying it's sport by any means, but it's just like,
no,
you want to put it to the test. You want to put those skills to the test.
Yep.
So, I think that was a big, part of how I felt when I was there. I've got all these courses. I've gone to Ranger School. I got my basic sniper. Like, okay, let's go. Let's see how I fare.
So then how does it go? So you guys take over, PPCLI heads back home. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. And then now you guys are in the breach. So what does it look like for you?
First kind of little mini op we did was with the Brit snipers right out of CAF. They're always launching rockets at CAF. So like, okay, we're going out at night. We're going to set up some OPs and we're going to see if we can find the Rocket Man, I think it was called. So, the whole build up to Afghanistan is like ID, VBID, we're always going out in armor. Well, the Brits are a little bit different. So we jump into their like Land Rovers with unprotected Land Rovers, and like
Yep.
I'm sitting on the back with my legs dangling out the back, going, "Okay, so my first trip outside the wire, and I'm gonna get blown. I'm gonna get blown up right now, right?" So, we deploy. Nothing happens, but a good just kind of little shakeout with the gear. We carried way too much stuff, too heavy, hot. Nothing happens. We come back in, and it's like, okay, you're getting orders, and something big's happening, right? So now we're getting ready to roll into Medusa.
All right.
So we get the orders for that. The debts are separated around with the different companies. We're with Charles Company, who is at Masumgar. I guess maybe don't quote me, but they were possibly the main effort on that. Right. So it's funny because we actually deployed with a JTF sniper det, and so we roll up. The lab drops, the lab ramp goes down. We get out, and Battalion had bought us these massive Kifaru rucksacks, like 120 liters. And I mean, this thing is loaded. I can, like, to get it on, I have to lay on the ground, put it on, roll onto my hands and knees, and get up.
Yeah.
So, I had an AR-10 strapped to it, and I had 200 rounds of 7.62 in mags as well in my bag with, a sniper that you're carrying a section's worth of gear, and we were 3 guys. Yeah. So, we're heavy, and we got to do this 800-meter walk up Masumgar to our spot. Meanwhile, here's the Dwyer Hill guys who had some ANA, and the ANA are driving them up in their Ford Rangers. And I'm like, man, those special forces guys are just so much smarter than us. So eventually we get up to the top, and the JTF guys had a different objective that they were looking at. But thankfully, I knew a couple of them from their RCR days. And I'll be honest, it was nice because we were 3 dudes, probably about a kilometer away from the main body, perched up on this hill. And, we could see they had battle positions down in front of us, and we're looking across the Argonne. But, it was comforting to have, a little bit of backup up there too.
Absolutely. So, otherwise you guys would have been pretty exposed, pretty limited in anything supportive.
Yeah. So, we get up, we set up, we do our thing. We had I don't know if we initially had the 50 up there or not. But obviously the ranges were massive because we're looking across the whole Argonne, and the infamous White School, and the Dwyer Hill guys, they had a JTAC up there, and he was an American guy. And that first night, like, that guy, I learned a really cool word, and it was Winchester. So I said, "What's Winchester?" And he's like, "Oh, I just emptied my second Spectre of the night." And I was just
no
like,
ammo left.
Oh yeah, out of ammo, Winchester. Yeah. And that guy was just working targets all night, Wow. And it was insane. He's dropping from planes, and then the next day, Apaches. And so it was really like, holy shit, like, this is real. Like, those are real bombs. They're killing real people. And yeah, it was, we took a few shots once we got to 50 because the ranges were massive. What we found was, Artie was awesome. We would just flip right onto the Artie net, and we give them our call sign, and then, they would know that, it's the snipers. They know what they're doing. And we're just dropping bombs on guys, right? You're too Amazing. Far. You're too far for rifle fire. No problem, bud. We see a guy moving a recoilless on a cart about 3K away, and we're like, yep. So we just get the guns on them, get the 777s, and
That's
more
amazing.
than one way to get a kill, right?
Absolutely, and it's so cool that you bring that up because I was never a sniper, but get a ton of respect for what they do. And a lot of what we used to do, where I used to work, is our involvement would seldom would there ever not be a time where snipers were involved. And a lot of times, when people think sniper employment, it's for the precision fires, which is one piece for sure. But a piece that gets overlooked is the amount of information that guys can give us when they're in those positions with the right optics. They're the eyes ahead giving quality information. And man, I can tell you from my experience, 9 times out of 10, if there was a question that as a team leader or even just as a member doing the job, if there was a question I had, I genuinely would ask the snipers, because they're usually, the first ones out the door. They got eyes on whether or not they're there with the precision fires or just the optical ability to give us that information. It's such value added. So that story that you just shared, giving that information to the artillery folks so they can drop the 777s and it's awesome. And it's stuff that people need to hear about, because I believe those stories don't get shared enough. And, the amount of good that you guys did collaboratively, working the pieces of the battle group with the expertise that are available is just awesome. And Canadians done some pretty badass shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you made such a good point. It's, everyone thinks the sniper and it's that shot, right? But it's like you said, it's like gathering the battlefield intelligence, being able to absolutely, minimum collateral damage if we are engaging with rifle fire, but being able to do the arty, being able to call in like emergency CAS as well, which, we did multiple times too. It's just, we're a good tool in the toolbox. And then plus we love to watch, right? We love to watch and we are always on glass, right? Yeah. So if we're glassing an area and we see something that's out of the ordinary, like we're going to notice if something's out of the ordinary, right?
That's right.
Oh, why is that guy hanging out there now? And he wasn't there before. So, and even though that bit of information might not be important to me, I still got to pass that because maybe it is important to the int guys, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely all sorts, definitely, why we can be a force multiplier on the battlefield for sure.
100%. Yeah. Very cool, man. That is awesome. Well, good for you. So, and how long was that tour for you guys? I mean, cause for folks that I'm sure people that are, tuning into this stuff, the algorithms are probably around the same type of demographic, but, Op Medusa was, pretty massive deal for Canada and for a lot of the allied nations that were part of it. So Op Medusa for you and your involvement, do you recall how many days, how long was that Op, and how involved were you guys for the duration?
So back in 2016, I was able to start working with Kydex, and the reason I wanted to start working with Kydex was because I was a left-handed shooter. Finding left-handed gear was extremely hard. So I just put 2 and 2 together, started working with Kydex, making left-handed holsters for myself. From there, quote unquote, refined my process. Started making gear for buddies that were cops in military, and it literally snowballed from there. Everything that we do is handmade by shooters for shooters, and there's a lot of other Kydex companies out there, and they are also for shooters by shooters. But we take the time and we care about what we do, and I think that shows in our products.
Like working here, this is our home. We brought it from home and we created a home. Our kids have worked here, so this is our home.
So Medusa for us was about 23 days. And so on the actual day of the assault, I think my dog's creeping in here. Hi, buddy.
Right on. Hey, buddy.
For the actual day of the assault, my deck commander decided, okay, we're going to go across with the assault. Okay. So first light, we go down and we load into the back of a lav. And, I look back and I'm like, we strapped our flak jackets and our helmets to our rucksacks. And they were strapped to the lav because the plan was we're going to push across and then we're going to deploy out to a flank, right? And do flank security and overwatch. Well, anybody who knows anything about Medusa is that nothing went to plan there. Mm-hmm. And, then we find ourselves in the middle of it. I've got a bush cap on. I don't even think I had body armor on. And we got a wounded medic gets thrown in the back of our lav. And then a company sergeant major, because a mortar hits in between our two lavs, he's in the back of our lav. And then it's just like, okay, we got to do something. So me and the deck commander, we grab the medic and we walk him back about 200 meters. There's a bison sitting in the middle of the Argandab, and that's like the CCP. So we walk him back and we pound on the ramp and they drop it. We toss this guy in and it's like, well, now what? Right. Like we're out there with suppressed C8s and bush caps on. Yeah. And, our guns are in the lav and we're kneeling by this bison, and like every few seconds you just hear ping, ping, rounds are just hitting the bison. And it's just like, okay, like basically it's like, this is where I die. Right. This is where I'm going to die. And then not to cut you off, because this is fascinating and also educational for folks that don't know. When you think about, you just loaded up a casualty into what is referred to as a CCP, so a casualty collection point, which is a rolling bison, which is a armored personnel vehicle. How many people, just so people can get a visual, how many casualties do you feel could be loaded up in one of these things at one time, depending on the severity of their injuries, of course? I think laying down, I think you get 2 stretchers in there, maybe 3. And sitting, you could probably get like 6 to 8 guys in there, I would think.
So not a lot of space. You load up a casualty. Now you guys are taking incoming fire, and you can hear it, and you're feeling what? What is going through your head at this point?
I think in a way, like the combat has a calming effect in some ways, where you just kind of have to give into it, right? You just have to be like, okay, I'm here. This is the situation I'm in. Like, and now let's deal with it, right? So this is what we got to deal with because we're here and they're shooting at us, and that's how it goes. We've been hammering them for 2 days, and now they're giving it back to us. Like there's a bit of give and take in it, right? So, and I think too, you have to in a way come to the realization that bad things might happen. Bad things might happen to me. Right. And I think once you sort of woo-saw that, you can just be more focused in what you need to do.
I agree. There's an element of acceptance. It's like, man, I'm just going to do the best that I possibly can, knowing that I'm a professional and I'm competent at my job. Whatever happens, happens. It's like for us to dwell too heavily on all of the contingencies. Oh, what if this happens? We'll do that. What if man, at the end of the day, we're not any better off if we don't take action. So I agree with you. And I think it's tough to explain that to people that maybe haven't experienced what it's like to be shot at and what emotions go through your head and what you're feeling at that time. Cause it all happens and it feels surreal when it does.
Yeah. Well, and don't get me wrong. There's certainly fear. There's I'm not trying to say I was just calm as a cucumber. Like there's fear in there.
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah. And that's real for sure.
Yeah. So I mean that situation, that was that initial push on Medusa, and we lost I think we lost 4 guys on that assault across, and it was, yeah, I mean, when we did finally roll back to the battle position, there was disbelief, because you kind of go into it in this sort of like, band of brother mentality, and then you come out of it and the band's been broken up, like it's the realization really, really sets in when you have that time to reflect on what had just happened.
Right. And so once the dust kind of settled from that initial battle, how much time did you have to reflect before there was a new objective or a new focus?
From that, we went back up to our OP where the JTF guys were still up there, and they kind of gave us a debrief of what they saw. Which is kind of cool, interesting just to get their perspective on it, because they're like, oh yeah, we could see you guys because you're the only guys running around there without helmets on. So yeah, and everything sort of just slowed after that, and then I don't even know if it was the next day, but then there's the friendly A-10 strafe.
That's right. That's right.
So and I remember I was off ship, and I just had my Ranger blanket like pulled over my head, and the light was just starting, like it was morning, and then you just heard that. And I mean, anyone who's heard an A-10, you'll never forget the sound of an A-10, but
never.
There's that, and then I just remember pulling the Ranger blanket down, and I'm looking down at the lavs, and you just see dust and smoke.
Oh boy.
And you're just like, holy fuck. Like what? And now the radio's going, and your debt was still up there, and you guys had a couple advanced medics, and those guys were like, we're going down, and 3 or 4 of your guys like ran down, and that was Mark Graham got killed in that, lighting a fire, and there was about 30 other guys that got wounded in that, and so that company, Charles Company, they were basically, competent and effective after that strafe. Yeah. But again, that's just another big, this is war. And these are the things that happen.
The mistakes happen, man. And, it's whether it's just miscommunication, complacency, a combination of fog, of war. It's tough. Because people often want to put a finger on what was the cause, so they can fix it and prevent that from happening in the future, which that's educational and intelligent, makes sense. And then there's other people that just want to put the blame on somebody, and I it's tough because emotions are real, but I chalk that up into what I refer to as the 10% clause. You can do everything, you can do all the planning. You can continue to see the shit out of everything that we're going to execute. And the reality is, in war, there is situations and circumstances that will happen that fall into the 10% clause, which is there's 10% chance that no matter what we say or do, the bad guys have a say in the matter, or situations are going to present themselves that we have to react to it. We're not going to be able to fix every single problem before it actually becomes an issue. And it's tough to kind of wrap our heads around, because I feel in our profession, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people want absolutes. This will absolutely not happen, or this absolutely will happen. The reality is, man, like, no, the reality is the bad guys have a say in the matter, and we're going to have to respond to, what's thrown our way.
Absolutely.
Would you agree or disagree with that?
110% agree. Like you can what if it all, you can contingency it all, but yeah, there's absolutely that at a minimum, that 10% of that you just can't plan for. That is just that randomness, almost like the randomness of combat, right? That is going to creep in.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So that you had a lot to deal with in a very short amount of time. And then, so from there, walk us through what did the next, couple of months look like for you, after that tour?
Yeah. I mean, the next couple of months, we deployed to a couple of different areas. We spent a lot of time in Spurwangar and a lot of time just developing, kind of the area between would have been like Patrol Base Wilson and kind of Massengar Spurwan area, like basically the Panjway district. So we were doing a lot of night infills. We get dropped off in the lav, our sniper det, and we would go and just kind of try to get eyes on a lot of constructions, a lot of like road building that was happening. So we were just watching a lot of like likely, okay, they're going to try to IED this here or there. Sometimes we'd go out with, 2 dets in offset. And so, yeah, a lot of OPs, a lot of foot patrolling at night.
And that's cool. So with these observation posts and in the infills at night, were you able to see the fruits of your labor? Were you guys able to disrupt a fair bit of activity?
No. A big problem was just elevation. So you're going out and you're picking your spot and you're trying to get the best eyes on that you can. But in Panjway, there wasn't a lot of high features. And if there was a high feature, it was IED'd, right? That was just that. So you're sort of picking the best of what's left. So, we had a lot of different ways to get elevation in the gray putts and, get up on some roofs and just pick a section that we could watch. Do I think we disrupted, maybe not with fire, but with presence? Yes, because there's definitely times that they would know we were out there. Yep. And I mean, we're also still learning, learning about, having the drones and surveillance, and it wasn't definitely nowhere where it is now, but, getting to have a predator up there, right. And knowing that pred's up there and being able to get feedback from them. So again, it's just that constant learning kind of environment and just how to pack, like, what do I actually need to take if I'm doing, a night patrol. I'm not, I'm 24 hours out. What do I actually need compared to, I need ammo and I need some water and everything else, some optics, everything else is Gucci. So yeah, I mean, a good transition there. And then we sort of rolled into when we were in Spurwangar, which is this massive high feature. And it was actually US infrastructure. They owned the land all around it. So we actually worked a lot with the ODA, with the Green Berets.
Cool.
So, and I think it was just with, once they kind of saw our capabilities and kind of our skill set, they were like, okay, we want you guys. So any op they rolled out on, we would roll with them.
Good. Good.
So, a funny one is, love the Americans, and you can't make this stuff up. So we're in Spurwangar and we're going to go to this high feature called Zangabadgar. So they had their spy ops Humvees with these massive speakers on the roof.
Yeah. And
they're driving out of Spurwangar and they're playing Ride of the Valkyries, like from Apocalypse Now. Like it's blaring out of the speakers.
Okay.
And you just sort of got to shake your head and go, oh, okay.
Yep. That's a way to do it.
So the mechanized element goes out. We're part of the dismounted. So we're, walking through these great fields and, these massive 6-foot walls. I know what they're like. There's these massive 6-foot walls that, you put a block of C4 on it and blow it and it'll still be standing.
Yeah.
So we're making our way through all of this and we're getting ICOM chatter that they can see us and that we're approaching and they knew where we were going. So we, the captain or whatever, he's like, hey, can you guys get some arty onto the high ground? And we're like, yeah. So we kind of wheel off, we get up on a rooftop and we call in some arty. So we're calling some arty and they're air bursting on top of this big, it's just a bald rock, Zangabad. Yeah. And a couple of the rounds went long and just skimmed over the top. And because they're just firing from Spurwan just behind us. And, and then we get an ICOM that they had an ambush set for us on the far side, and the arty actually went in and disrupted that ambush. So
Oh
we
shit!
had some
Wow.
long rounds, but we got some feedback on the ICOM that we got
Right.
some guys. So
And for folks that are listening that don't know what ICOM is basically indigenous communication. So that would be like the chatter that the Taliban would be using to communicate with each other, and we'd get some fidelity on what they're thinking, planning, or actually talking about. So you guys get that information. One of the artillery rounds that go a little bit far, but actually do some good.
yeah.
So what's the play after that? What happens then?
So then it gets interesting. So we move the rest of the way, but we got another kilometer to go. And this is a daylight move that we're doing. So we get up onto Zangabad, and we get up on there. So we had the ANA, the Afghan National Army, and we had some Afghan National Police, which we never trusted very, very much.
Fucking clowns.
Yeah, for many reasons.
Clowns.
Yeah. So we get set up, we're spending the night. That's our first bound because we're going to continue pushing west the next day. So we're getting tucked in, and we're up on this beautiful gar. The sun is out, so the sun is setting, and just classic Taliban ambush. The sun is in our eyes, and I remember because we're a 3-man team, and one of the other guys he's standing up on the rock, and he's got his hands up. He's like, this is beautiful. And all of a sudden, 2 RPGs go
oh boy,
right in front of him. And then from both sides of the gar, it is just, so they're just horseshoe ambush. They're just hosing us. Like, PKM, everything is just blasting. We jump into our hole, and the Air Force JTAC, Ryan, awesome dude, but always hung out with us because, like you had said, we see stuff, we know. So he jumps in to the hole, and he's basically, guys, I got air stacked. Where? So we've got the vector binos hooked up to the GPS, and so we're seeing like the poo point of origin. So you're seeing the puff of whatever's getting launched, and it's just like lays grid, and just hold the GPS up to Ryan. And those guys, like those JTACs, are just, man, awesome. They're studs. They're just the best. Yeah. So calm, and he's just like bone 1-1, and he's just calling in stuff, and we're just dropping bombs and doing gun runs for like half an hour. And amazing. He's just like, and he just sat there, and we would laze the target. We would pop we would shoot a couple rounds just to try to like fix them in the spot, hopefully keep them on the ground until we could get air. Yeah. And then he's just dropping bombs on them.
What do you think it is about those guys? Like, my exposure to JTACs, similar, just calm under pressure. It's almost like they're ordering a cheeseburger from whatever drive-through, And what is it about their personalities, or is it the training, or is it just the type of personality that's drawn to that job? But man, just cool as cucumber, great, clear, brevity communication, get to the point, and just wreaking havoc on the bad guys, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they must, their selection process, that must have a high attrition rate, that course. Yeah. Because exactly like you said, any JTAC we dealt with, it was the same. Like, it didn't matter what was happening. They were just calm. It didn't matter. Like, it just, I don't know. I think they must be trained so well, and they must have so much, like, just the experience. And this guy Ryan, like, he had been in Iraq, and now he's over here with us, and just like, he's like, Barry, I got like stuff stacked. I got like 6 levels of air stacked, and he's just so crazy. He's just I mean, the Americans, those guys,
man, like, they've got it all, eh? The resources, like, so resource rich. No big deal. We've got 6 layers of air stack to choose from. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. And then they bring in, and then I always remember they bring in a Spectre at night. And so everything had calmed down. We established like a little defensive perimeter and claymores and all that. And then Ryan pops in the hole. He's like, "Hey, Barry, I got a Spectre coming in." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "You ever rope in a Spectre before?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Right. Mm-hmm. So he's like, well, he gives me his big laser pointer. He's like, "Yeah, just make these big circles and make it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller." So we rope in the Spectre, and then yeah, he's like, hey, I think we should put down some spec fire. And I'm like, okay. So, couple 105 rounds, that's a pretty interesting sound too. 105 getting shot in the sky from above you.
Yeah, it's definitely not a 22.
No, and a couple 40 rounds. And we slept well that night, knowing that thing was circling around us for 4 hours.
Amazing. Wow. Awesome. So tell us, after that tour, sounds obviously like you gained a ton of experience, and the whole battle group had a lot to deal with. You guys come home from that, and then what did the next little while look like for you in battalion?
Well, Randy, I feel like I'll end that tour, I'll say, with a negative. So, January, we were working out of some of the strong points, and we had an IED strike, our team. So that was, I'm sure Jody Middick. So,
yep.
So that was another one of those, moments that is just, it's fused. It's just fused in your mind. So, I walked point. That was my job on that tour, right? I was the point guy. So, hindsight is what it is. And it's like you said, it's that 10%, you've been over some sketchy ground and it was okay. And, we went over some sketchy ground that time and it was not okay. Sure. So, we have the IED strike, and 3 of us walked right over it. Like Jody was the last guy. And, it's like, had I hit that, right, the blast had gone backwards. So the blast would have taken all of us out, right? It would have been, we would have bled out there because nobody would have been able to do anything. So, right. I'm about 20, 30 feet ahead when it goes off. And it's just that, that explosion, and then that smell, and then just, you can hear debris going through the air. And then that realization that, okay, I'm okay. And then you hear someone's not, right? So that was a hard end of the tour, but
and if you're okay with it and comfortable with it, when this incident now happens, how many people are in this patrol? How many people are now involved, with this?
Well, there's 4 of us. So we've got 1 wounded, and we've got 1 guy on the radio, obviously calling it in, getting the 9-liner going, getting Casevac spooled up.
Yep.
I go back, I'm doing first aid, and we got 1 guy on security.
So when you're applying first aid, so you're attending to Jody, he's in bad shape. So as the casualty evacuation is called in, if you recall, what was your priority at that point? What were you thinking? Obviously trying to stop the bleed and obviously trying to help him, but do you recall, like, and by all means, Barry, like, if you don't want to talk about it, then we can push past it. No. Like, I'm not trying to...
It's a big chapter in the book, to be honest,
Yep.
Randy. And I remember it vividly. The double blast to both legs below the knee, and still to this day, I like Jody, like superhuman. Just he had so much understanding of what was going on in one sense, where he's like, he knew he needed a tourniquet, and he told me, Barry, you got to put a tourniquet on, right? And like, I'm already doing it, but he just had that wherewithal, right? So, it's you're tourniqueting, and at one point I had to go to white light from red, and I really remember that, right? Because you're looking at everything in red light, and then when I remember like flicking the filter down, and then just seeing the white of the bone and the red of the blood, right? It's just like, it was just vivid. Like, bam, it's there, right? But so there's that sort of like, there's that holy fuck, but then there's also, I got to save my buddy's life here. Right.
Yeah.
So get it done. So, I mean, really it's, I think one or two tourniquets on one leg, one on the other. He had a compound fracture. One bone was sticking out. One of his feet was completely blown off. The other one was like a 180, just barely being hung on by like a piece of skin. But, we have minimal equipment. So it's, we're just there, check the bleeding, check the pulse.
Yeah.
And Gord's working the radio, and it's like, you guys got to get here. Like, and I'm checking his pulse, and I can feel that it's getting weaker. And I always remember I was holding his hand, right? And I remember like I grabbed his junk. I'm like, buddy, your package is there. Everything's intact, right? Shit you want to know when you step on an IED. Only time I ever grabbed another man's junk, but I felt it was warranted. And I'm holding his hand, right? And I was squeezing his hand so hard. He's like, Barry, you're hurting my hand, right?
Holy shit.
And it's like, you have both of your feet blown off, and he's complaining that he may have gone into shock, but he was always with it. He always knew what was happening. He always knew what was going on. He's basically self-diagnosing himself,
Yes.
And, and then eventually, we thought a helicopter was going to come, but eventually, because we were only about a kilometer or two from a strong point, is they bulldozed a road to us. And recce platoon, because we were going out on a battalion op, recce platoon ended up cutting over to us, and they had a legit medic with them. I think he had a better tourniquet. He put that on, and kind of they took over. And then I remember like Gord and I, our automatic thought was secondaries, right? And now there's all these guys like pounding on the ground, like feet everywhere. And I remember we were just like, man, like if something goes off now, like this is a mass cash.
That's right. Yep. So man, good call. So what happened? Did somebody, did you guys start recommending thinning it out, or like how did that piece get taken care of? Because that's important. Because you're absolutely right. That could have kicked off to something massively disastrous real quick. Yeah.
Like I know Gord, talked to the recce platoon commander, and it's like, hey, like we got to stop. We got to stop all this movement. Like let's I get it. Everyone wanted to help, but
of course,
there's only so much that needed to be done. Right. So kind of, consolidate that. And then, they take Jody away in the AM, and I remember now we have to walk back. And I remember just, I was scared. Right.
Of course.
Like I just saw my buddy get blown up, and I'm like, now I have to walk back. Like, motherfucker, hoist me up in a helicopter and get me the hell out of here. I do not want to take a step on the ground, right?
Yeah, I don't blame you.
It's like, yep, let's go. Sun was coming up, and just the op obviously was canceled because of what happened. But yeah, I mean, and then see Jody a couple days, and then he's off to he's off to Germany, then off to Canada, and then kind of the tour just sort of. We handed over to 2RCR on that one. Yeah. Yeah.
And do you remember how long after, so when you guys did the handover, everything's still relatively fresh, of course. There's a lot that went on in that tour for you. When you get back home, how long before you and Jody were able to see each other?
First thing I did, like first weekend, like I'm home, and then it's like, okay, I think he was in Toronto, Sunnyvale, I think was where he was doing his rehab. First thing was down there and having drinks with him, so. Right.
Shit. And, it's been a long time, but, do you and Jody still stay in contact? Have you guys chatted in the last little while?
No, not really. Sort of just, kind of just, occasionally. I mean, still in touch with lots of the other guys kind of from that tour. Yeah. We still keep in touch. We still try to get together around Remembrance Day and just, have a drink and count our lucky stars.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, for sure. Lots of, like you said, you ended that on a negative that nobody wants to see that ever. We all realize that that's a legitimate possibility. We do everything we can to mitigate the chances of that. That's how things end, which is unfortunate. But, just hearing that story, and I haven't read your book yet, so I don't want to spoil it for folks. We're going to talk about it in a second. But some of the good stuff, when you look back on that tour, lots of good stuff. Canadians did a lot of good things. You guys as a task force did a lot of good things. If you could just draw one of the positives from that tour, looking back at it, something that you're super proud of, you can maybe share that with somebody that if they ever find themselves in a similar situation, just something they can take away from that.
I mean, just resiliency, the ability to just keep going and stay focused and doing your job when there's just the bad shit that is happening around you is unfathomable, really. Right. Like we lost a lot of guys that tour and a lot of friends, and you don't get to go back. You don't get to go to their ramp ceremonies. You got to stay out there. You got to stay in the fight, and you got to keep on, doing what you're doing. And that was, all the Canadians over there, just stay on task and stay focused and stay in the fight. Right.
Yes.
That's what we're there to do.
So, all right, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the book. Where can people find it? Tell us about what motivated it. How long did it take you to write it? Anything you're proud of. I think it's something to be proud of for sure. And I'm looking forward to reading it. I haven't read it yet, but tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, so the book was the idea of Mir Baumann-Yahr. So Mir's a legit author. He's written dozens of books, done stuff on SEALs. He's produced in Hollywood. He was part of the technical team for Black Hawk Down. Just awesome guy. He's a really good friend now. So he had come to the battalion with an idea to write a book about Canadian snipers because he had heard so much good things and all of these records, and there must be something in the water up here. So his idea was to he started interviewing guys from the 1st and the 3rd, and was going to make his way through the other regiments and just do some interviews and then compile a book. But as he sort of was doing those, in his words were like, he's like, I'm not qualified to write this book. He's like, I can't write this book. So it sort of went to, hey, Barry, do you want to write a chapter? Hey, Gord, do you want to write a chapter? So, I wrote a chapter about stalking. And do you want to write another chapter? And I mean, this had all been going on for a decade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I'll say in the last couple of years, we kind of morphed into Gord and I's book, where we had done the majority of the writing. And another guy, Yves Bedard, who had also done 2 tours as a sniper, 306 and 110 with me as well. He wrote a chapter as well. And, the book, it came from that. And what really, I think, makes it stand out is it's kind of part technical about the training and about the kit. And then it's, some of our experiences in Afghanistan. And what we really wanted to get out is, and we had touched on this at the beginning, sniper's job isn't that one sexy shot, one shot, one kill. Like, it's not always like that. You don't always get it right. You miss.
Yep.
You miss, right? You miss shots. You can't do it because of the range. You hit IEDs. You're scared, you're happy, you're frustrated. So, I mean, I think the book really covers a lot of that, and from 3 different perspectives, 3 different voices. And another, I think, important point to note is you look at all of those tours, that like kind of like that 06 to 010, you're rotating, you're two groups in there every year. Like the amount of snipers that were out there that were doing the job day in and day out was amazing. Like the work that we as Canadian snipers did, that's completely unknown, it's like a tribute to that, right? Like I didn't want to be in camp. I wanted to be out. I wanted to be out watching an area, watching a road, gathering intel, gathering data. And I mean, that's a big part. Like we're out there every single day. If you're Vandu, if you're PPCLI, if you're RCR, we're out there doing the job every day.
Amazing. And the book really reflects on not just what it takes to get into the position to do that job, but also, the technical components to enable you to do your job. So the book covers all of that. Am I accurate in saying so?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we talk about, we talk about the training, the shooting, the stalking, and up into, the future, the future of sniping. I think it's, I think with the kind of the three of us writing, you get a kind of different perspective where I'm a little bit more, I'll say, emotional in my writing, where Gord, just the experience that Gord has, he's so technical. He knows so much about sniping, having, worked like 28 years and having helped with, CSOR and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I think it's just, I don't think there's anything like it out there. It's not a chest pump. I did this, by one guy. It's just a kind of culmination of a couple careers as snipers.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, man. That's awesome. And where can folks find it if they're interested? What's the name of it? And like, just give us a little bit of history on, the title of it, the authors' names, and where guys can find it.
Yeah. So the book is called Send It, Canada's Snipers at War in Afghanistan. It was written by Gord Cullen, obviously myself, and with Mir Bomanyar, who was definitely the guy who spearheaded the project. You can get it on Indigo, Amazon. I know it's in a bunch of Indigo stores around Ottawa and in some other cities as well. It came out in July, just this past year, and
good stuff.
Yeah, it's been doing really well. We've got basically a five-star reviews on it. It's been received well within the non-military community and the military community, and it's definitely a book that we're proud of. Very
good. Well, good for you. You should be proud of it. That's awesome. And you said it took about 10 years to get it off the ground. And the reason I mention that is I've been struggling. Like, I've been requested a couple of times. I've thought about it internally a couple of times about writing a book. A couple of years ago, I started the old-fashioned just pen and paper. And then I realized this isn't really efficient because I'm kind of all over the place. So then I started using the computer. And then I found I would spend a lot of time driving, so I would use audio. I would just record myself basically talking to myself as I'm driving for hours and hours on end. And then I'm struggling with, as I'm kind of going through the idea behind writing a book is, to share a few excerpts of, the journey in the military, the crossover with mixed martial arts, and just tell stories. But I don't know how it was for you guys, but as I'm going through it, I forget a lot. I forget a lot about the dates. I forget about names and who exactly was with me and where. And I feel like to do it properly, I would certainly want to do it right and not to, cause a disservice to anybody that might have been involved, or fact checking, if something happened that was a little bit off date wise, or just, from a realistic factual perspective. How was it for you guys to basically cross-reference or to clarify or to just ensure that the facts were what you wanted to be shared?
Yeah, I think as far as like the big facts, like the kind of dates, the times, the tours, we just sort of, I could bounce that off the other guys. But, the interesting part, and I think this is really what I brought on in the writing process is, like, Randy, you and I could be involved in the exact same situation and we're going to remember it differently.
Yes,
And,
exactly.
and I think that's important to take on, especially when you're writing something. And if that's how you remember it, even if it's 10 years later, well, that's how you remember it. Right. And I think that's important because you're in what I've noted, or, you know, what I've definitely seen in writing this is some of these stories are 20 years old.
Right.
I've changed, right?
Yes.
My perspectives have changed. So even though I'm trying to think about, you know, those thoughts and those feelings from 2006, I can't write it without having the perspective I have on just everything now. And that's going to, you know, that's definitely going to influence your writing style, but that doesn't make it wrong. And that doesn't make it not factual. Right. So I think the big thing is just write it how you remember it, write it how you feel. And, you know, it's going to be good.
Yeah. Well, man, that's good. I appreciate the advice, and I'm super proud, man, that you've done it. You know, you're sharing these stories, and I'm also very stoked that Josh put us in connection, because this is a great conversation, man. I feel like I could shoot the shit with you for another like 4 or 5 hours, and we'd only just touch, you know, certain things that you've experienced, that I've experienced, and crossovers between the two. I think it's really, really cool, man. So for what it's worth, I just want to take a moment right now to say thank you very much for making the time, and being so open to chat about it. You know, people have heard me say this before. There are a lot of good Canadians who have done a lot of good shit for this country, but nobody talks about it. Well, seldom people talk about it. So I'm glad you wrote a book about it. I'm glad there's people that have helped you and supported you along the way. And I'm also glad that we were able to chat today. So thank you very much for making the time.
Yeah. And thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. Love your channel, love what you're doing, and really appreciate the opportunity to share some stories and talk about the book.
Very cool. So Barry, tell us what are you doing now? Like what gets you out of bed in the morning? What keeps you motivated? What makes your heart happy? Like what is it? What is the thing? If you could do one thing for the rest of your days on the earth, what would it be?
Well, I think it would be a crossover. I think it would be riding my motorcycle too fast, and honestly, just being outside, being outdoors, in the canoe, in Algonquin, you know, putting a pack on as much as it sucks and throwing a canoe on my head and portaging into a lake, and just, you know, either with myself or with my family or just with my wife, and just, you know, being at peace. That's what gets me, or going really fast with my hair on fire.
Which is awesome.
Sort of a contradiction, but
the different layers of your personality there. But I can attest, like I'll share this with you, and I'll see if it resonates with you. So I'm a bit of a adrenaline junkie, and I used to have a ZX10, and that bike, as you know, is designed to do one thing, and that's to go fast. And I remember one time I looked down at the speedometer and it's reading 299, and I'm on this straight stretch in an area of Ottawa where you can see for kilometers, and there's no cars coming. There's no cars behind me, and there's no cars coming. So I think this is the time I'm going to open it up. And I'm stepping on this thing, and I'm hanging on, as you can imagine. And at some point, the adrenaline kind of nullifies or becomes numb. And then I start thinking about, what am I going to get at the grocery store when I arrive? And it was that moment. It was literally that day that I decided to sell my bike. And I thought, if I'm no longer getting the joys, or the adrenaline is no longer doing what I was hoping it would do, then it's probably time for me to sell this thing before it kills me. But what I like about going fast, and what I like about that feeling, is you're not thinking about anything else. You're only thinking about keeping that bike in the upright position and watching your surroundings and how quickly things happen. I don't know. It's such a thrill, man. But, you know, what you're sharing with us here, where you like the quiet and the calm, the sanctuary of the wilderness, and you and your rucksack and a canoe. And then the other side is like full throttle. So what kind of bike do you have, and what is it about the speed that you like?
I have a BMW S1000R, so
very nice.
1000 cc,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's like you said, and you're going fast and you need to be focused, right?
Yeah.
And you need to be focused because if you do something wrong, you're gonna die, right?
Yes.
And now that I'm older, you kind of look back and you're like, oh, is that am I trying to like recreate something that I used to do as a career, because, when you're in the army, you're in Afghanistan, you're in combat. It's like, you're going fast in a sense and you need to focus, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, there's times where I think, am I trying to replicate something that is impossible to replicate? Because, you can't replicate that high of combat, just like you can't replicate that low of, when your buddy steps on an IED, right?
Yeah.
But like I said, that's perspective 20 years on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you, man. Well, awesome. That sounds like, you're doing really well, which is great to hear. Very, very easy to chat with, man. I look forward to another conversation in the future. And, for folks that, I don't know if you have a social media presence or not, but if folks want to reach out to you, how can they find you? And if not, just maybe plug the book one more time so people can get their hands on it.
Yeah. Instagram, at Send It Book. And then I have a website, barrycnisbet.com, where, if you want to reach out and chat about the book or anything like that, I answer the emails, more than happy to. And the book, Amazon, Indigo, a bunch of other bookstores, you can find it online.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Barry. Really appreciate you taking the time today. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to reading the book and connecting with you again sometime in the future.
Awesome. I'll send you a copy, Randy.
Right on. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks.